indeed these pivotal trials. Chuck, as we've said, no one has seen in the United States anything like this. What's on your mind and top of mind as this first day starts?
Do I only get to pick one thing, Jose?
How about what are the things top of mind?
You know, I may have been spoiled as a federal prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia, where jury selection went very, very fast, 30 minutes, 45 minutes tops. So for me, this is fascinating. Not only is there a questionnaire, which we didn't use, but the lawyers themselves get to question the individual jurors, which we were not permitted to do. One thing I'll be watching for is how Judge Merchan controls his courtroom, right? The defense attorneys here have an unlimited number of strikes for cause, as do the prosecutors. How many of these jurors will they find unacceptable and try and get rid of? How will Judge Merchan push back on that? How will he control his courtroom? Will they move with dispatch? Do they start on time? Do they end on time? Because one thing you have to keep in mind, you have to make this not just fair for both sides, but you also have to make it fair for the jurors. They're giving up big parts of their lives to come do this. And so, controlling the courtroom, moving the case, moving it with dispatch, being fair to both sides, seating a jury that it can be fair, that can apply the law to the facts. All of those things are top of mind, Jose.
Maya, let's talk about the legal theory. These jurors will be asked to consider and to judge whether or not this former president is guilty or not. We know that we've referred to it as a hush money case. That's kind of short for the broader picture here, and the DA is casting this as an election interference case. How do you see it? What do we need to know?
Well, the first thing and most important thing we need to know is it's not just the district attorney is calling it that. It's that the judge himself has said he is going to say to the jury that count one includes the question of whether this was being done to conceal information and therefore is an election interference case. The jury's going to hear that from the judge, not just now the judge is not going to say whether or not that's true or not. But this case is being cast explicitly by the prosecution and therefore the judge to the jury as fundamentally about not just did he falsify records, which obviously has to be proven and will be. There's no question about that. But was it to conceal from voters the fact that he had had these affairs and to prevent them from coming out because it would damage him? At the end of the day, central to this case I think there's evidence that corroborates Michael Cohen, but are the jurors going to believe Michael Cohen and that corroborating evidence? It is there, but that's when we're looking at this jury process, and to Chuck's point about the length and controlling the courtroom, the most important people in that room are the people of the city of New York. Mm-hmm. The most important people in that room are the people in that jury box who are ultimately going to be selected for that jury. The most important people in that room are going to be the ones that are going to say, we're going to decide whether we believe the evidence or not.
And Tamandayo, just what evidence is presented or not presented in the different aspects of this trial and of the case, right? What are the biggest challenges for the prosecution in this case?
I think here it's going to be a question of credibility. I mean, you're putting these witnesses up that had times, Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, who have previously said things that were not true. They've made false statements in the past. And if you are a defense lawyer, that's your first attack point. It's their credibility. He's asking them, were you a liar then or are you a liar now? And you're telling the jury, do not believe them. And remember, the burden is on the prosecutors. Prosecutors have to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. And Donald Trump's lawyers, they can't get up there and say, they haven't made that case. I don't have to prove Donald Trump is innocent. They have to prove that he's guilty. And I think that's the attack point, is that these witnesses are not credible. But that's where corroboration comes in. That's when the prosecutors say, you don't have to just believe Michael Cohen. Look at the documents. Look at the audio recording. Put all that together, and then you can believe and find beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump is guilty.
Caroline, I want to come to you in just a second, but let's go back to Vaughn, who is just outside the courtroom, get an update on what's happening right now as this trial kicks off.
Right. Jury selection is supposed to begin here any minute. Of course, that was today's order of business. But we did also expect, and this is now what is coming forward, are deliberations over some other pretrial kind of conversations here. One of those being the motion for Judge Merchan to recuse himself. Of course, we have seen Donald Trump over the course of the last several weeks continually call into question Judge Merchan's ability to fairly judge this case, namely because of his daughter's affiliation and past work with a firm that had done business on behalf of Joe Biden. Now, Judge Merchan, as we are getting notes from inside the courthouse right now, is fiercely pushing back against that, calling it an unfair innuendo, saying, quote, "It is the opinion of this court, based on innuendo and unsupported speculation about a member of the court's family. Defendant has failed to provide evidence that this court has direct personal or substantial interest. There is no basis for recusal," Judge Merchan defiantly said. This is a part of the motion that we heard last week. Trump's legal team had taken this to appellate court, it had been shot down, and now Judge Merchan is standing by the decision that he will, in fact, continue to oversee this case. We saw last week multiple attempts by Donald Trump's legal team on behalf of their client to try to effectively delay this case and call in question into the integrity of the court here. We expect other points of conversation to be taking place before jury selection begins. One of those conversations also expected to take place is over the gag order and the extent to which Donald Trump may have violated it with two particular social media posts over the last week, but we have yet to get to that conversation on the side of the courtroom. That could happen imminently, guys.
Okay, thank you, Vaughn. Please keep us posted. And I do want to just note on the issue about the judge's recusal that was requested by Trump's team. This is something that dates back to last summer when that was first brought up. The judge in this case went to the state court's ethics board, and they basically gave him the green light. And he also came back and said on the record, this court has examined its conscience and is certain in its ability to be fair and impartial. So this is an argument that the Trump team has tried to make kind of over and over and over again to no avail.
And just seconds ago, Merchan was very clear, and he said, among other things, for these reasons, the defendant's second motion for recusal is denied, and the court will not address this matter further.
So, Caroline, what are they trying to do here, do you think?
Yeah, so Merchan is sort of bulletproofing his record on appeal. So, as you noted, this is a renewed motion. There wasn't much new evidence coming forth, but that's sort of the standard to sort of make it again. He had gone to the ethics board. I think at this point, because he got that go-ahead from the ethics board, he actually has an ethical obligation not to recuse himself and to continue presiding over this case. This is nothing new. Trump has tried to get other judges in other cases recused for far less than, what we've seen here with Judge Merchan. It's not going to work, but the defense team is just, ticking off their appellate issues yeah, exactly.
And Carol, let's talk about some of the witnesses, because there are some pretty big ones in here, potential, right? Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, David Pecker, Hope Hicks, and of course, Michael Cohen. We actually have been hearing from Cohen over and over again, as frequently as just over the weekend. This is what he had to say just over the weekend.
If it was you in this specific case, we'll call it the campaign finance violation case as opposed to the hush money case, though the president and the porn star certainly has a better television ring than campaign finance violation.
It's getting a Lifetime movie for sure.
It sure does. You would be already charged. The case would have already taken place, and you would be incarcerated.
Do you agree with that? And Caroline, is this like the prosecution? Is this a good thing for the prosecution as they prep their possible witnesses?
No, I was going to say, first of all, if I'm Alvin Bragg's office, I am just, appalled and saying, what can we do to rein this guy in? It's so inappropriate, highly just wrong for a potential witness to be. He's promoting it kind of like he's starring in an upcoming film. It's not a good look for Alvin Bragg's office. You never want your, witnesses to talk talk like that. I read a New Yorker piece about this. This is kind of like the Seinfeld finale where every bit character from, Trump world gets to come and sort of have their say at the end of this. So we are seeing people come, back into our conscious. Hope Hicks, this cast of characters, all giving their, gloss on the situation. At the end of the day, though, honestly, Jose, I think this is a documents case. The proof is in the pudding, and really documents don't lie. We're talking about the credibility issues with Cohen. There are tape recordings. There are documents. Those things are difficult to rebut at trial. So I think those are going to be the stars of the show.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.